Things Fall Apart, pages 101 through 125 guided tour. Put up a little picture to remind us this particular region right here with this major line that's actually a river system from a giant lake that forms up that boundary. This whole area right here up in this quadrant is the area that we're talking about for the river basin, the Niger River Basin, and it's this. All of this particular picture shows where rainforests occur and where heavy forested regions are. Here is the mountains, and above that is the deserts. So the deserts and the Mediterranean giving way to more moisture as we get further down, and then it turns into just lush and lots of rain in the area that we're talking about. All right, this section is a relatively short guided tour. You're going to see why it's got a lot more focus on plot and a little bit less stuff that's like surprise. Just a few reminders that will help us anchor some images for us. First one is going to be the black powder cannon. They do have cannons. They also have black powder guns. I'm just going to show a simple one go off because you'll see all of the smoke. It makes a noise. It's impressive, but I doubt very much that a cannon, any cannon like this, would probably be a 1700s naval cannon that somehow found its way ashore in trade. It wouldn't be a modern 1800s. This was written in the 1800s. It was supposed to be about the 1800s. It wouldn't be a modern 1800s weapon. It would be very unlikely to find its way back in there. So anyway, this is a cannon. I guess we could roll one more time. Lots of smoke, lots of noise. They're going to probably not be shooting that with a real cannonball in it. It's not going to make the same sound. They're going to be shooting that with some sort of a plug that will at least give it some back pressure to make it produce some noise and etc. But that cannon is probably not shooting artillery, although people do that. They do fire real cannonballs out of these things. Okay, moving along. We have the Equi. The Equi. We have machetes. Alright, so machetes are a little bit different. The machetes, these are long and heavy, and they've got a specific design. You see that there is more weight at the front of the blade. This, once it gets moving in one direction, when you have all that weight at the front of the blade, it doesn't stop as easily. They learned that with a number of different designs throughout history, and it would create a thing that could go through things and chop through things with more force than just a simple straight blade would produce. So they have a lot of them on this page that all are showing that curved front end with the enlarged front end, and those are going to be the typical Nigerian machete shapes. That they might be a little bit more or less, like this one's less, and these ones up here are more, but it gives you the general idea. They usually have that weight forward design. And then Okonkwo's gun. This is the one that I finally found a pretty good representation. This one is beat up enough, old enough, out of times enough, and flintlock, and it gives you the idea. I mean, it's the type of thing that would get traded back in is not going to be shiny and new and fully functional. It's going to be something that might still work that you can put on a show with, but it's pretty beat up. Those were the types of things that would get back in far enough from the shore that the people who were getting them didn't have any idea how to work them or what they were or who even traded for them. They've got to be items that people don't mind parting with, probably older, probably a little bit more beat up, like something like this. So this is not an 1800s gun. This is, something much, earlier vintage and beat up, kind of a thing. Actually, this is a modern picture of somebody with a very old beat up gun. And that's what I'm picturing Okonkwo with, something that's pretty beat up that made itself to the interior. That's going to become part of the storyline coming up soon. Alright, so really we run up with a ton of different plot threads, and it all becomes plot-based suddenly. It's not so much of an interesting, the way that the court works or something like that. This is all of a sudden dramatic story changes all within 25 pages. From 100 to 125, a lot happens. So the exile to the motherland, Izzy is the guy who warned Okonkwo not to kill Ikki. That boy calls you father. You don't bear a hand in his death. But there's an accident, and Ikki's murder was a failed attempt. He gets away hurt, not killed, and he runs to Okonkwo for protection. And Okonkwo does not want to look weak, so he strikes the boy down and kills him. Then long time, now we're back to where we're at in the book now. Izzy has died. He's the one who told Okonkwo, don't do that. Izzy has died, and Okonkwo accidentally kills Izzy son at Izzy funeral while saluting Izzy. He uses that old gun, and it blows up. Piece goes flying, and it kills the boy, getting him in the chest. It seems like it maybe pierced his heart. Okonkwo is immediately banished. It's considered the female Ochu, which means everybody accepts that this is just an accident, that no intended malice. And how could anybody blame him for intended malice? His gun blew up in his hands. He would have to have been suicidal in order. I mean, there's no way you're going to get away with it. You're standing right next to it. You're at the most dangerous point. So he didn't try to do this. He just got terribly unlucky that it happened, and terribly lucky that it didn't happen to him, but terribly unlucky that it happened to somebody else. The female Ochu means that it's an accident. You didn't mean to kill a clansman. You didn't kill somebody who is part of the family or village on purpose, but you did it. Time away. So while Okonkwo is away, Obirika, which is Okonkwo's friend, sells and invests Okonkwo's yams and stores the money. And he is an example of a true friend. He also comes and visits him periodically, gives him some of the money, and then goes and talks to him about news and things like that. They still keep in touch. Okonkwo flees to his motherland, and that's when Obirika will meet him there when he wants to bring his money from his yams. He tries to regain strength for his return to his village. That's Okonkwo's big plan is, well, I've lost everything. I've lost all of my status in the clan. They're going to forget about me, who I am. I'm not going to have a chance to kill anybody during any great wars. I'm not going to have any chance to do any other great things. I'm probably not going to get considered for any high titles now. I got to come back and make a splash, and I'm going to have to take 7 years off of my plan. He's very upset. And it shows. He looks so sad that his uncle, who he goes to stay with, Uchendu, sees it in him and wants to have a talk with him. So he tells him through a story about himself how many he buried something like 22 children. He's outlived all of them. One wife of his constantly had twins, and they constantly had to bury them in the evil forest, alive. You put them in pots and leave them in the forest. Terrible sadnesses that they had to go through all over and over again. He says it just happens to everybody. Look, this is the way you do it. You survive, and then you adapt, and then you thrive. If thrive goes away, then you adapt, and you try to work back to thrive. And if it keeps going away, you try and keep working back to thrive. But if it knocks you down to the lowest level, you survive. And then you adapt, and then you thrive. And that's what he tells in his story to Okonkwo. This is what needs to happen, which is pretty important because of what's going to happen. So the whites, the English, it's hard to say. Later on in the novel, it says, where is your head of church from?" And he replies, "In England." So English church. But regardless, fair-skinned people, probably from Europe, since they're quoting the English church in England, make contact with and destroy Abeme while all of this is happening. And that's it had a story in itself. First, it was one person coming, and then they consulted with the oracle, and the oracle said that that person's gonna bring others, and then they're gonna go. We're gonna all die. So they murdered the missionary, the first one who came, and they tied his bicycle to a tree. Others came with locals who were guiding them and just showed them, yeah, this is, I think somebody came through here, and yeah, there was an iron horse. Really, we want to see it. So it took them over just to the tree to show them the iron horse. They looked at the iron horse and they left. That's all they did. We got to remember that, and normally when there's an act of war or something like that, they send emissaries. They talk about it before they make a understanding. We're going to war. Then and Okonkwo went through that. He represented his people as an emissary. That's how he got Ikemefuna and the young girl at the beginning of the book. That's how fights are conducted. But that's not what they're going to do. They go away and they come back, and this is when we see the historical pivot point between Henry repeating cartridge-based rifle and the old black powder breech loaders. A breech loader means you load it from the front, and it's real slow. This is weapons technology. 2 minutes to load a gun versus the Henry black powder. They can jam up a little bit. They're not as good as a modern firearm that isn't shooting black powder in a case, but those things, you could theoretically shoot 15 shots, and each time you pulled the lever forward and threw it back, the old one spat out, the new one was loaded, and then you've pulled the trigger again. A true semi-automatic, 15 shots at a time, and then to load 15 more probably takes less effort than it takes to load one black powder shot. If you've got one guy with several Henry rifles, and you've got half an army with black powder guns, you've got an even fight. There's that many more shots capable per minute from that Henry rifle, and that's exactly what they probably did. They brought modern arms after they realized, oh, they slaughtered our missionary, so they showed up and they just decimated the entire village at a market day. Nobody lived. And later on, you're going to hear them talk about the strong guns, and that's what they're talking about. Guns have changed. When we're looking at guns like this, which you can repeat fire over and over again, versus the guns like this, that's why it was such a ridiculous massacre. That's what happens, right? Ridiculous massacre. So anyway, so we get into a whole bunch of plot choices after that. After all of those little side notes for you, Okonkwo loses Ikki to Christianity, and his son finds a different way to live, just like Okonkwo abandoned the ways of his father, being lazy and just begging for a living through life. He didn't use his father as an example. He found his own path. And now Ikki is not using his father as an example, the violent, mean way, which it's a warrior society. So Okonkwo has got that figured out very well. Um, Okonkwo could survive, could stay with his mother's kinsmen and just be okay, just not do a whole lot of work and say, well, that was my luck. Okonkwo could adapt, could follow his son and join the missionaries back in his village. You're not allowed to come back and be part of the village as, you've been banished, but if Ikki can go back, so can Okonkwo if they go back and just become part of the missionaries and not part of the village anymore. That's another way to get back. It's a way to break his 7-year thing. Okonkwo could return home after the 7 years and live a reasonable life and not try to take the sun and the moon and the stars and beat everybody and get all of the titles and become the highest player in the game. That's what he wants so badly. Okonkwo could lean on his considerable family. He has 3 wives and a lot of kids, and he's got a lot of extended family. He's got so many that he's like, we've read about it. It goes on and on. He could lean on these family instead of forging on alone as a tough guy. Lot of chances, lot of options, lot of plot twists all at once in 101 to 125. Really interesting book, and boy does it change right there in that 25-page section. Thank you for your time.